Hello and welcome to another episode of Story Bakes with Katie Sue, where it's Marmalade-filled Madeleine Day! If you couldn't tell already, and I hope you could, this bake is inspired by my favorite fictional bear, Paddington. Let's get to the baking. Today I'm using a Madeleine recipe from Pastry Living with Aya, and there's a link to that in the description below. The only change I'm making to the recipe is to brown the butter first. If you've never had it before, brown butter is nutty and fragrant and super delicious. And it's really easy to make. All you have to do is heat some butter until the milk solids in it brown, and there's a trick I've been really wanting to try. Since the part of the butter that gets brown and delicious is the milk solids, if you add dry powdered milk to the butter as it melts, then you're adding more of those milk solids and will have more of those brown bits. And it worked! I'm well pleased with this. Madeleines are essentially little sponge cakes, which traditionally call for whipping the eggs, which act as a leavener for the cakes, making them rise and get that signature bump. This recipe uses baking powder and doesn't involve any whipping, but I trust Pastry Living with Aya to have a recipe that's just as good as OG Madeleines. After the Madeleine batter has chilled for a couple hours, I'm piping it into my prepared Madeleine pan that I've buttered and floured. I've been thinking about a Paddington-themed bake for quite a while now, always some combination of cake and marmalade. I love Madeleines, but rarely do anything decorative with them. I don't remember the specific inspiration for these, but I know it had to do with pictures out there of dipped Madeleines with little bear faces on them. Real cute. First, it's just enough to cover the bottom, then I'm piping in some of the most important ingredient, orange marmalade. Then this is going to be covered by more batter. I opted to use store-bought marmalade here, as getting the proper bitter Seville oranges is a hassle, and honestly, this is just easier. I think Paddington would understand that not everyone has a marmalade day. I've seen Madeleines that are very lightly browned and some that are deeply browned, and I'm erring more on the side of a darker brown to be closer to the color of Paddington's fur. I've gotta say, these are the most consistent bumps I've ever gotten on Madeleines. That probably says more about my traditional Madeleine technique than is flattering. Anyway, what's next? I had some leftover egg whites from making pastry cream for the triple coffee cream puffs in my previous video, so I froze them to use for just such a purpose. I thawed them and am measuring out the amount I need for today, and the rest are going to be part of breakfast. I'm using Preppy Kitchen's Swiss Meringue Buttercream recipe today. The link for this is also in the description box below. If you've somehow found my channel but don't know about Preppy Kitchen, then I really don't understand the algorithm. I'm leaving out the salt because I had a slightly traumatic experience where I added a touch of salt to some Swiss meringue buttercream and then panicked because it tasted salty. So while I generally abide by the rule that all sweets need some salt in the recipe, I prefer my buttercream saltless. Swiss meringue buttercream is one of my favorite frostings. It's silky and less sweet than American buttercreams, which are mainly powdered sugar and butter. You first make a Swiss meringue by whipping heated egg whites and sugar, then you slowly mix butter into it. This makes way more frosting than I need today, so I'm freezing about half of it for future bakes. I highly recommend labeling everything you freeze for baking. Whenever I don't, because I think I'll for sure remember when or what something is. I'm always wrong. For the red that will become Paddington's hat, first I need to mix in the vanilla. This was totally my fault because I forgot. The recipe wasn't written that way. I'm mixing in a good amount of Americolor Crimson, then microwaving some of the buttercream to intensify the color. It's a little melty after mixing it back in, but that's okay because this will chill in the fridge. For the band on Paddington's hat, I'm mixing a small amount of buttercream with Americolor lemon yellow and some cocoa powder. This was just a matter of adding enough to get the color that I wanted. Now I know that Madeleines are best eaten the day they're baked, but I'm headed to a sing-along showing of the Wicked movie, so everything is going in the fridge. Alright, let's put it all together. The Wicked sing-along was delightful, by the way. It really got me thinking about doing an alphabet bake and a separate Defying Gravity bake. So, stay tuned. Sitting in the fridge for a day or two can intensify colored buttercreams, but I did end up adding some Wilton Christmas Red to this before decorating. I'm using a Wilton 103 tip to pipe the brim on Paddington's hat, and I tried both piping the brim first and then second, and both ways seemed fine. At first I was thinking of the hat being on the round end of the Madeleine, but after looking at them, the square end is already shaped like his hat, and I'm glad I went with this orientation. Next, I'm using a Wilton No. 4 tip to pipe the band on the hat, and I'm already pleased with how this is turning out. Not everything ends up the way I imagine it in my head, and so far so good. For the face, I'm keeping it simple with some white chocolate calays and melted dark chocolate. Now, I've got a bit of a confession to make. I didn't grow up with a lot of Paddington. I think we had maybe a book or two, but I didn't fall in love with Paddington until the 2014 film, which is arguably the cutest, most heartwarming way to spend 95 minutes. My main concern with the faces is to get the eyes close to the same size and an equal distance from the nose. I think it mostly worked. Since I just need a little blue frosting for his coat, I'm experimenting with seeing if I can take this golden tan brown and make it a nice rich blue. I'm first adding a Mericolor Violet, which I'm hoping will cancel out some of the yellow tones and start pushing toward blue. I'm heating it to intensify the color, and it came out too dark, so I'm adding some Chef Master White, then a Mericolor Royal Blue. Now I'm using an ice pack to return the buttercream to a spreadable consistency, and I'm astonished and relieved that this actually worked. My knowledge of color theory is really more what I think should work rather than what I know will work. A little goes on the rounded side of the Madeleine to give us a peek at Paddington's coat. My original design idea for these, the one where the hat went on the other end, didn't have the coat at all, but decorating them flipped like this provided plenty of room to add a bit of blue. Really, it looks like his face is a little too big if it's not there. These are adorable. I'm just so happy that they came out the way I wanted with his hat that looks like a little bucket hat with the brim and his little face. I think this might be the best thing I've ever made. I guess we should see how it tastes. Here we go. Super brown butter madeleines filled with orange marmalade and decorated with Swiss meringue buttercream, both vanilla and cocoa, and chocolate. Oh no. How am I supposed to bite into this? This feels wrong, but here we go. I mean, what's not to like? The madeleines are buttery and delicious even after a couple of days in the fridge, and the orange marmalade is there in the center, but also kind of melted into the cake. Orange and chocolate is one of my favorite flavor combinations, and I love the light cocoa flavor from the blue buttercream and the marmalade madeleine. Does it contain all the vitamins and minerals a bear needs for a whole day? I'm no zoologist, but I'm guessing no. Is it tasty? Absolutely. Hit the like button if you want to see more Paddington bakes, subscribe and hit the notification bell if you're so inclined, and let me know in the comments what characters, shows, or movies I should turn into bakes next. Thanks for watching.